Medicare now. We have our upper 1%. Ironically, when I came through in 2000, you never saw an oncologist. But, you know, to help protect the patients, to help protect the patients.
Use your mic.
To help protect patients. I forgot my train of thought now. Oh, there's this law that says that Medicare cannot interfere with the doctor-patient relationship by dictating which drugs to be used. Okay, that sounds good, doesn't it? But let's say you have two drugs. One is one that you take orally and it costs $100. Another one is you take IV and costs $5,000. But they're equally effective. Now the doctor's going to get a 5% administration fee just for supervising getting the $5,000 drug. So there's a lot of economic incentives to go with the higher cost drugs. This is true in the field of ophthalmology especially, where there's some equally good low price drugs. Somewhere or another along the line, we've got to say that we need to go with the most effective, least expensive drug rather than the most expensive drug, no matter how effective it is.
Can I ask them about private insurance, the percentage? Ask that question.
There's a common concept that private insurance kind of runs our country. But remember the figure we put up, it's actually 64%, 1% of the country is involved in federal health reimbursement. What percent of the country do you think is covered by employers with private insurance?
About 18%.
What?
About 18%.
That's correct. That's right on money. He said 18%. Because remember, we always had before the 44 million unemployed, and then you add that, and all of a sudden you come up with 18 to 20%. Yes, ma'am.
So, to me, over these last years, the insurance companies, in order to maintain their profit margin or higher, got stricter than Medicare on medical necessity and intensity of services for admissions. To me, I've actually gotten a patient up out of bed and said, you have to go home. Your insurance company is not covering this crisis. Even with the neurologist calling the insurance company, they denied it.
The insurance company would say, but we didn't make them go home. That was their responsibility. We just said we wouldn't pay. Yes, ma'am.
When my kids were growing up, we hosted foreign exchange students, and we hosted two from former Soviet Union countries, one from Russia and one from Macedonia. So they have truly socialized medicine where they would come. And one thing we noticed about them is that they were far more educated on health, on physical education, on the body, on nutrition. And I think if we did move to a system where the government had a bigger role, whatever it was, in cost control of health and stuff, we would see more focus on preventative care. We wouldn't take PE out of our public schools. We would concentrate more on the foods that we provided at lunchtime. In essence, in an ideal world at least, we would have a more holistic view of what health is.
Absolutely.
Sure,
And
there's a profit to our sickness. I mean, it's basically what you're saying.
We're a profit-driven system.
Yeah. So,
and
the profit margin would be
the way the system's set up now, you get rewarded for the more services you provide as opposed to the better the outcome is. So the more surgeries you do, the more patients you see, the more income you could do. Yeah. Unless you're at the Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic. Yes, sir.
A lot of people don't realize that the pharmaceuticals spend more on lobbying and advertising than they do on research. We pay for medication twice. We help pay for the research, and we pay for the medication when we buy it. That isn't right.
You're hitting the nail on the head. His point is we're paying for medication twice. Do you know that over 80% of all new families of drugs that come on the market actually come out of public institutions? The National Cancer Institute, the National Heart Institute, the Institutes of Health, and the universities, and even our own OMRF. And once that they're developed to a certain point, then they're bought by the drug companies and brought to market, and that falls under their quote research budget.
Another thought is, I think they should be limited to charges no more than what county charges.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, George.
The pharmaceuticals should be limited to charge no more than what they pay in Canada for medication.
I think there should be a limit on pharmaceutical charges. The notice we quickly passed a law that said you could not go to Canada to buy your pharmaceuticals because you know they got a lot of bad and impure drugs up there, and we're going to protect the American people. The truth is that all of these drugs come out of the same batch, whether you're buying them in Mexico or Canada. I'm sure that there's a charlatan out there somewhere. But a pharmaceutical president was very honest on the NPR one day, and when they said, well, why do you do this? And he said, well, basically because we can. In the 2004 Medicare Modernization Act, it passed at 4:30 in the morning, so you knew it had to be a bad bill. Even George Bush didn't want it. But it was an election year, Congress and the Senate wanted it. And in it, there was a stipulation that said for those of us who are on Medicare, that there can be no competitive bidding for Medicare drugs. We have to pay the usual and customary charge, just like we did for hospitals and doctors before Reagan, for anything that's bought on the market. And that is why we pay for it. For many of you who are on Medicare have paid $30 for every 4 drug, only to go to your pharmacy and find this month it's $90. It happens all the time. I wrote down a couple of good examples. Duracell, the one drug we have for leprosy, increased 56-fold in one night. EpiPen, a life-saving drug for kids with asthma, all of a sudden jumps from $35 to $600. And then we got a pill for hepatitis C. It's come on the market at over $1,000 a day.
A pill.
For hepatitis C.
How many pills do you have to take?
Oh, you'll take it for 6 to 12 months. So the costs are totally out of control, but they are very protected by your Congress. Our healthcare lobby, doctors, hospitals, pharmaceuticals, and insurance, that group spends more money for lobbying than does defense and energy and education in the next 3 or 4. For all of your Democratic representatives that voted against a bill that's been recently introduced for a single payer, it's a good bill. They received over the last year an average of $56,000 from the pharmaceutical industry.
Tom, when we were talking in, Tom was speaking in Miami this week. A friend of ours suggested, just like utilities are regulated by a commission because everyone needs to have heat and electricity, and they set a reasonable platform for that, for both the supplier and the person purchasing it, that could a commission be set up that would supervise the drug costs in some fair fashion where it's not, I mean, this is just an out of control situation. We really need to look at that differently.
Even gasoline was regulated with the regulation they put in your car. Why do we think that's worthy of regulation, profit regulation in the healthcare?
Well, we probably could with the Oklahoma Insurance Commission. On the other hand, we're passing a law to bypass that completely. Yes, sir.
It occurs to me from the numbers you gave us and from the numbers we know that the taxpayers are already paying everything they need to pay for a comprehensive system. I mean, we're paying it through the various VA and And we're paying it through, state and local governments, we're paying it through, contractors, Boeing Defense. When they get a defense contract, we pay them for their insurance. So we're paying enough right now, so that no employer would have to carry any insurance on any employee. I mean, that's how much we're paying. If it's 65, 70%, somewhere in that range, the taxpayers are already paying. So if we can shave that 30% off the bill, that means we're already paying for it, we should simplify it. And if we simplify it, then it's not a burden for anybody. All we have to do is match, or be 60% or 70% of some other country, which we know, we don't even have to be smart to do that. We just have to pick up their system.
And we already have, Medicare's already existing, so the format is already there. It just would need to be expanded to the rest of the.
So the system's so convoluted because it needs to be, so somebody can make money.
Money.
And that's the only reason, because it's not a good system. Just,
You are correct.
Do you happen to know what the Medicare, isn't it, the administrative cost of the Medicare is like 2%? Is it 2%?
Yes, 2%. Interestingly, is this a problem of the American people? Are you part of the problem because you overutilize hospitals, doctors, and services? The answer is absolutely not. When you compare the American population with the Japanese, the British, the French, the Germans, we actually use the hospitals and doctors much less than any of them. You are not the problem. Okay, I'm getting on my high horse here. Sir, you are absolutely correct in what you said. Doctors, do you realize that in the state of Oklahoma, we have the lowest doctor per population ratio in the country? Which is, when you look at Russia, Russia has twice the doctor-patient ratio as the United States. The,
Yes.
it varies like us. And you go to Europe. All I can tell you is that if you live in Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, you're going to live longer. As I said before, if you're an Italian boy born in Italy, on the average, you're going to live 4 years longer than a boy in the United States. We can change it, and we will. But as Winston Churchill said, Americans will eventually get it right. They'll just try everything else first. Thank you.
So, wait, so when you think we ought to just, lobby our representatives for a single payer system, and then have a committee on maybe form some sort of committee on the pharmaceutical issues?
I think firstly, I'll let this go through.
Right.
You know, this is another, it's kind of a moral qualm. I have no idea what the theology of everybody here is. But when you let your party theology surpass your Christian theology, something's really wrong there. Because how clear does the New Testament say when I was thirsty and you gave me water, I was hungry, I was naked and you clothed me, I was without shelter and you brought me in, and I was of ill health and you took care of me. And as you did it to me, you will do it to my Father in heaven. My Father in heaven will do it to you. I mean, that's about as clear. And I'm having trouble with Baptist ministers tossing this out. Well, that really doesn't count in this case. But our morality suggests it should count. Thank you.